I should have left the room. This is it.
Oh. All right. So welcome to the February 7th, 2019 meeting of the Housing Standards Board. Thank you guys for coming. We've got, I guess we can go around the room or table real quick. Al, can we start with you?
Al LaPlante, building inspector.
Heath landlord.
Catherine Dawson, health officer.
Tim Hubert, deputy chief of the fire department.
And I'm Darius Hassan, the town planner. I just want to quickly, since we are on camera, just quickly remind everyone the purpose of the Housing Standards Board is to review the implementation and performance of the Housing Standards Ordinance, propose any necessary amendments, and if necessary, develop supplemental materials, including but not limited to forms, checklists, and guidance documents, which will facilitate implementation of this ordinance. Any new supplemental materials or amended supplemental materials shall be approved by the Board of Selectmen prior to use. Proposed amendments to this ordinance shall be made only by the Board of Selectmen following at least one duly noted public hearing. So you can see the agenda we have. It's pretty simple. We've already covered number one, introductions. So I thought we could talk a little bit about what the implementers of this program have experienced in 2018, and then under the next item in the agenda, 2019 ideas. Catherine has, I think you guys have seen, I circulated through email some proposed amendments to the ordinance, so we can look at those. And I guess if we agree on those, we would potentially forward them to the selectmen and allow them to have a public hearing to adopt those ideas. So without further ado, does anyone have any 2018 experiences that we'd like to cover, or do we want to get right into the amendments?
I mean, I'm curious. You guys would have been the two that are most likely to implement any of this stuff, right? And Al a little bit.
The three of us go.
Has it come in handy? Has it been useful? Have you been able to
Educate,
maybe create revenue?
It's funny, I just pulled some data. In 2018, we did 80 inspections. So we're getting out there.
The housing board inspections that were planned?
80 inspections. Now, it might be 2 or 3 or 4 to the same property.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, I think we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish. We're educating property owners, we're educating tenants. The one issue that we run into is when people do not want to comply with the standard. It doesn't happen all the time.
The landlord for
the property owner.
I'm sure the tenant would want to.
It doesn't happen all the time. When it does, it really makes it difficult to get things accomplished. So, you know, property owners missing appointments, property owners not doing what they're supposed to do. But I would say for the majority of the properties that we inspect, it's been a very positive process, in my opinion.
Now, have you run into a lot of out-of-state property owners?
A few. Not a ton, but a few.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. It does in that aspect work well. I have had landlords tell me that it doesn't give them enough information, and that we have a few things specifically listed in it, and the only thing I can do is refer them to the state codes and tell them how to get there.
I think when we put it together, a lot of it did reference state codes.
Yeah.
I think we went around and around on the wording and the
Right.
specificness of everything when we were
And,
creating it.
Definitely.
some of them will ask me, well, why don't we list them? And I said, well,
you can't list them all.
we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pages. I said, so that's why it's referenced, but they're not listed.
But I think most of them when they get the paperwork from you guys, it's spelled out. It's not like it's hidden. This is what actually you have to do, and this is why you have to do it. It's listed and it's spelled out, so.
But that's my only big complaint from landlords, other than, as Tim said, some of them don't want to comply,
Right.
and that's where it is difficult. I don't have any teeth in this to get. I mean, I have a list, and I don't really have anywhere to go with it to collect for different fines. And, get them to, we'll show up at the building. There's a couple that I've stopped scheduling because I don't have anything to say, you have to or else.
I see what you're saying.
You see? So the strongest thing we can do is to pull their occupancy permit.
I'm sure that would get their attention.
Well, there, and, I think we should always use it as a last recourse.
We don't want to do that, but
That's something we never really added into the whole proposal was how to collect, the terms of what if you don't comply. Like, yeah, they give you a fine, but
Right.
now, well, if I don't pay the fine, there's nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Catherine's amendments do start to address that.
Well, I see that I glanced over it briefly and it said, how it brought into increasing the fines and whatnot. But was there something about, a means of collecting or a means of enforcement, I guess it would be?
I think I'm looking to see about the penalty clause. Did I add it?
Right, like if you fail to comply, you get another penalty and a fee. But like, they just stack up. It's like speeding tickets. If you don't pay your speeding tickets, they're going to pull your license.
One of the big things is that, like, once we get into a place, if there's a significant life safety issue, then I have the authority to close the building down. But the problem we're running into is we can't get into some buildings, so we can't. If no one wants to show up, no one wants to comply, we can't do an inspection and see what's there for violations.
Right.
So that's one of the struggles that we're having. Only on a few properties.
Yeah.
But unless we can get inside it, there's nothing that we can do.
mainly by the same owner.
So if you look, to answer your question, on the last page, I have any person, firm, or corporation who violates any provision of this chapter, which would cover if they don't pay the fee.
Yep.
Here's a consequence. And a violation, I believe the statute is now, can be up to $1,000 a day for every day there's an occurrence. So, exactly, and unfortunately, as Tim said, it's a small minority, but I find that they also have the worst buildings.
Right. But then,
It's like right
if
now.
you show up and the landlord's not there, the tenant, are they not inviting you in? Like, yeah, 'cause, I mean, if I was a tenant and my landlord wasn't taking care of my building, it'd be like, come on in, buddy. Like,
So-
make this a better place for me to live.
We just went to one, the landlord property owner was notified. They didn't send back the certified, they didn't sign for it. The regular mail did not come back to me. I did get a message on my phone that he wanted to postpone the inspection because he needed to do a lot of work on the apartment.
Major work.
Major work.
Yeah.
Which isn't a reason for us not to go in. Tell me you're
Right.
sick, you're out of town, but don't tell
Work
me.
together, yeah.
Right.
You can't come
So-
because I got stuff that doesn't comply.
I called him twice and left him messages letting him know, and I sent him a letter letting him know the inspection would go forward. He didn't show up. He didn't notify any of his tenants of the inspection. One of his tenants was home, we knocked on the door, and he let us in. But I think it was either a four or five family, I don't remember, but we couldn't go into the rest of them.
Yeah, so it was just the one unit that you could.
So he violated this ordinance in that he didn't appear and he didn't notify. And I don't think there's a penalty for failure to notify, because it does say in here it is their responsibility to notify their tenants. So,
If one of those apartments speaks, that one spoke. And if it speaks for us, then
Really?
there's problems.
and so now I sent him more mail. He won't take certified, the regular mail won't come back, but he's not answering the phone. He's not returning any of my calls.
Have them served
What's my recourse?
Have him served.
That's the only other
by
option.
the sheriff's department.
Well, that's the next thing I'm gonna have to talk to, the town prosecutor, what does he feel my next course is, because now we're getting into, legalities, and I wanna make sure I do everything right.
Well, he lives in Tilton, actually, we can serve him. Tilton Police Department can serve him.
Yeah, we can have the Tilton Police Department get a return to service, but
Yep.
I don't have any teeth.
I can see where that would be a struggle.
But, for the majority, I think most of them, they send me in, they call me up, they send me back their tenant permission slips.
They're willing to work with us.
Oh, they're, very nice. Sometimes, yes, it's kind of a pain, they have to leave work, but they're still,
I think the second time through, we're gonna just, it's gonna be so much easier too, because the expectation is already known. By the property owners, by the tenants, so, this is the first time for us going through a lot of these properties. There's a lot of properties, a lot. And, maybe we're a little ambitious saying
3 years.
3 years.
Really?
But we're getting there, so I think the next time through, when we go to some of these, next time around, it's gonna be seamless. So everybody knows, what's required and what we're looking for, so.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Knowing that we're educating them, not trying to hurt them.
Right.
It's more of an education thing, they're hurting them.
Yeah, we're working with property owners all the
Yeah.
time, so.
Especially where it's the first go-around with
Right,
these.
because your first go-around's education, but once they know, and then they don't have the intent to comply, that's different.
A couple of these properties, we've had 6, 8, 7 re-inspections. But it's a learning curve for them. Some of them we've given them like grace, and
Yeah.
some of them they're just trying to bamboozle us.
All right.
Should we, are we ready to take a look at the amendments Catherine proposed?
Yep.
All right,
Is there another copy for?
yeah. Does anyone else need, Terry? Oh, you want, Catherine, you want anything?
Oh, what?
I've made packets.
Oh, you did?
Did, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
What packet?
So, if we could just jump right in, I actually wonder on this first one, I generally agree with all of Catherine's recommendations, and in fact, probably the only one I have a comment on is the first one. I feel like the purpose statement, Catherine, is very general, and I wonder if we could add this language that you're talking about to the inspections section. Other than that, I don't have, I don't.
Oh, wherever you think is necessary. The only
Okay.
reason I suggested it is we had talked before about some buildings, just because of their age, actually don't have a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
And that these inspections may be one way of actually having that physical paper
On file.
take
Yeah.
place and on file. So that was the purpose of this.
Now, if
And then, of
you're,
course, we have something to pull. No.
So
True.
basically, if they don't have one, basically you'd be, or if they do have one, you'd be pretty much renewing it every time.
Either renewing or giving.
that's the only thing. I feel like if you're reading, if you're associated with a property that has a existing CO and you read this and you say a CO will be issued by the code enforcement officer, could we say, and I tried to think of another term, like a certificate of occupancy will be issued or upheld by the code enforcement officer. I don't know if that,
Or it could say by the town of Tilton.
okay, but I guess just that, I was trying to add another term to kind of cover what I think Heath is getting at. What if there already is one in existence? Can we add a?
Of course.
So if we say a certificate of occupancy will be issued or upheld, does that work? By the.
Or renewed.
I just feel like the question, that would make sense, except he doesn't actually renew it. He doesn't like redate it or something like that.
Okay.
Although upheld, maybe you're right, is the same way.
Why can't we do that?
Okay,
I mean, I think it's easy enough.
okay.
Some, like you said, there might not even be some that are on file for some of these properties, so.
Oh, there's some that's nothing
Right,
on
so-
file.
I just ran into that in the
a new CO will get issued or renewed with a new date on it.
It should specify me and Tim. Tim
how,
signs it too.
but Al, how do you feel about that? Like, does that, does the level of inspection that you conduct when you join these guys on a housing standards, inspection, does that really give you the confidence you need to say, yeah, I'm hereby like reissuing the certificate of occupancy?
To the best of our knowledge, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we can't tear walls down.
Right. I mean,
But
renewing.
we can go visually see, we actually check plugs, which is checking the wiring. If there's a problem with any of it, we usually have it corrected.
When I look at Main Street's a perfect example, right? We have businesses that come and go and open and close in the same units. The buildings are old.
Right.
We have to issue a CO every time a new business comes in.
So it's on the business, not the building.
Right.
So,
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So how do we feel our certificate of occupancy will be issued or renewed by should it be code enforcement officer or the town of Tilton? Did you have a preference on that, Catherine?
No.
Okay,
Whatever works.
just leave it with code enforcement officers. That seems fine to me. Certifying the building's compliance with requirements of the Tilton Housing Standards Ordinance, applicable building codes and other state and local laws, and indicating it is in a condition suitable for occupancy. I'm fine with it. Do we want to talk about this one more, or should we move on to the next one? Do we want to vote on each one of these individually as a group to say whether we support forwarding these to the Board of Selectmen for potential adoption? Any thoughts or preferences?
You vote at the end.
You want to vote at the end?
I would.
Okay.
That's always my vote too.
All right. All right. So should we move on to the next one?
Sure.
All right. So second page under additionally, add under water supply. Well, I'll just read it. Properties with private wells will allow the health inspector access to the water supply to take water samples to be submitted for a standard analysis and radiological analysis test as recommended by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services and the New Hampshire Department of Public Health at the property owner's expense. These samples will be submitted to the New Hampshire Public Health Laboratory located at 29 Hazen Drive, Concord, New Hampshire. The property owner may supply the health officer with a copy of recent test results from a New Hampshire accredited laboratory done within 3 years of the inspection date for both the standard analysis and a radiological analysis. So would it be as a substitute the property owner may supply, or is that
Yeah, I was
alternative?
looking at that. It should indicate that if they, not just show a test, but a passing test,
Okay.
then that wouldn't have to be taken, but it would have to be no longer than 3, because I got that language from DES's recommendation on testing standard, testing your well water. Those are the 2 tests that they recommend as a minimum. I mean, there's others, VOCs, blah, blah, blah. And I believe it was in here, I got the 3 years.
Okay. I feel like similarly to the way that the first few sentences talking about you take, or the health inspector taking a test doesn't speak to whether the test will come out positive or negative. Maybe we could just leave the last sentence also not. I mean, you're saying in the first section, the health inspector will take a water test. And then we could say, alternatively to that, you can hand her a water test. And then, whether they pass or fail, I mean,
Is it offering to accept a water test that has been done separately, doesn't that open up the opportunity for someone to go down the street and fill up their water sample and take it down to the state?
Oh, good point. Good point.
I mean, I can pull a water sample from here and go down to the state and have it tested, and then hand you a slip that says that it comes from my house. Like, there's no way to tell where it came from.
Well, I can tell you, there is chemicals or fluorides or whatever in the town water, correct?
Pardon?
There are certain things they put in the water, the town water supply, right?
But this is for private wells.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
He's saying you'd be able to detect if it was off of town
All right,
water.
but it's like on my property, I have 2 wells. And I have one that would not be considered safe for the general public to drink because of the coliform, which is just plant life. Well, I've been drinking it all my life, so, but that's the only thing wrong with it. The well at the barn always tests perfect. So in that respect, if I was required to test my water, and I knew I needed to have a positive test,
Right.
guess which well I wouldn't take the sample from?
Right.
It never occurred to me that somebody would,
So should we get rid of that whole last sentence?
yes.
Okay.
That way you have someone of authority pulling the sample and you know where it's coming from.
Thank you. I didn't even,
Is that something that you have the time to do though, is collect
Right,
water?
it seems like,
So,
well, I thought about that, and we've only done one house, one home, one building up on Caleb that wasn't connected to the water system. I can't think of any others we've done. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's.
I mean, in my realm of health officer, outside of the housing inspection, when I have tenants just randomly call me up, there's probably been 4, maybe 5.
this sounds like, when we were creating this, there was a lot of stuff that didn't really pertain, but was kind of more of a health inspector's aspect, but you wanted it in here just to give it some coverage. And this seems like, now,
From listening to
if there's a health inspection or a health hazard that has been reported or something, then maybe you would need to pull but I don't think it'd be necessary to pull a water sample from every inspection.
No, only private wells, because I periodically, I get the testing, is it quarterly, that the water district does. So, if there's a problem with the water, I know about it, but there hasn't been for years.
that's a good point. Most
So-
of downtown is-
The only ones that are suspicious are private wells. I find in this, listening to landlords, they don't want surprises. Now, as health officer, could I require that? I probably could. Under 147, the nuisance law, I could say to you, I need to sample your water.
Right.
But I want it in there because I want landlords to know that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be surprised. I don't have to spend 20 minutes explaining to them why I want to sample their water. Lazy.
Okay, without any further comment, we'll move on to the next. On the second page, there are some additionally, the following shall be required of each rental unit within the town of Tilton. So there's a recommendation here to address overcrowding as another subsection under the additionally. So overcrowding, no person shall let to be occupied, and no person shall occupy any dwelling or dwelling unit which is overcrowded. Overcrowding is determined by the following: no habitable room other than a kitchen or dining alcove shall contain less than 65 square feet of floor area, nor shall the least horizontal dimension of such room be less than 7 feet. The total area in all habitable rooms in a dwelling unit shall be such as to provide at least 65 square feet of floor area per person. Every sleeping room or rooms used for sleeping purposes shall have at least 50 square feet of floor area per person. Children under 1 year of age shall not be counted, and a child more than 1 year of age but under 10 years shall be deemed 1/2 person.
And that's, I'm pretty sure I got that from Manchester.
Okay.
It's not my language. Oh, yeah.
Al and I kind of wrestled with it a little bit before the
Yeah.
meeting. I don't know how, I think, at first yeah, kind of were, or I was anyway, like, why 50 and 65?
Right.
But now that we looked at it more, it kind of makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It is exactly their language, I thought it was.
So, all right, if there's no more on that one, I'll just keep moving along. Third page, failure to appear, increased fine to $75 for second reinspection. What is it right now?
50.
Okay,
I'd make it 100.
I think we got
That's no joke.
increasing, increased fine for second reinspection. So, okay, so that's not the,
That's not the initial.
that's not, right, it's not the initial. So if you find issues and then you have to come back, it's that one?
No,
No,
that's failure to appear. If you don't show up to an inspection, then when we have to come back, that's when we find
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
missed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what I'm seeing is two things. So they go the first time, they see some things that are wrong. They say, all right, we're going to be back in 30 days, and to verify everything's fixed. That reinspection, that return visit in 30 days is free.
Right, you missed the same thing I did.
Okay.
Failure to appear.
This is just to fail to appear for an inspection.
You don't show up the first time?
Right.
Inspection at your place.
it's for both, failure to appear and for second reinspection.
Did you want both of them to go up to $75?
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Why
there
would-
is
The
a,
second re-inspection, that's where I was getting at. Okay.
yeah.
Why would
So-
we find them to come back the second time when we're gonna give them 30 days?
So, well, you,
No, the second
The
one.
second,
Yeah.
so it's the third inspection.
The third, yeah, okay.
It's the third inspection.
Specify that,
If you
right.
didn't clear everything up when we
Right.
come back after the 30 days and we have to come back a third time,
Right. We should clarify that though, because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's not my
well,
language, but
the second
you have to read it a couple
read,
times.
that's where it,
Right,
Yeah,
well,
they
they're gonna read and go,
right.
It's the
So-
third inspection.
so I'll just finish it. So you guys go, you say, give them a list, you say, we'll be back in 30 days, you come be back in 30 days, that's free, but if they haven't corrected them and you have to come back again, you want that to go from $50 to $75, regardless of whether they show up.
Right.
And if they don't show up, that's also a $75 fine.
Right.
Okay, all right. Do we all okay with that? All right.
unless they call in advance and say, listen, I need a little more time.
Right.
And that's fine.
Okay, all right,
And that's
That makes
written into
sense.
the language already, I think.
all right.
Right.
Okay, third page under reinspection, take out everything after owners of rental units with violations, make a new paragraph and add, okay. Failure to appear. Take out everything after owners of.
So it's really the 1, 2, 3, 4. If you come from the bottom and go 1, 2, 3, and then in the fourth line you see persist beyond the time frame.
Wait. So, see, so reinspection, there should be no fee, blah, 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 for second, so on the third line, I'm gonna pick up a fee of $50 shall be charged to the owner, period. Then owners of rental units with violations, and then you wanna,
Found to be uncorrected by the correction date and have not received an extension or buildings that do not comply with the Tilton Housing Standard Ordinance that is, oh, that's kind of, is refused or unattainable will have their occupancy permit revoked and an order to vacate the building will be issued.
okay.
That's also language from Manchester. Sometimes it's hard when you try to fit things in from some people's ordinances.
I guess I did like the fact that I kind of like the, I mean, I actually like the sentence that you're taking out. I also like the sentence you're saying put in, but the existing sentence, owners of rental units with violations found to persist beyond the time frame for resolution. I like this part, shall be subject to applicable fines and penalties existing under authorities delegated by state and local law. I thought that was a good sort of or determination that the board came to say, we're not going to assign fines for all these different violations. We're going to let the fines that exist within the existing programs come into play. And I guess I'd rather not get rid of that. Could we keep that and add?
So, applicable fines and penalties existing under authorities delegated by state or local law are so varied.
Mm-hmm.
They're so varied. I mean, so if I had a building that had, under 147, had some issues with leaking sewer, which we just had, those laws are completely different. There's a whole process you go through as health officer. If they don't fix it, I can actually have it fixed at the town's expense. And then if they don't pay that, it becomes a lien against the property, and you can actually take the property for failure to pay. And the penalty, I think that's a violation, so that'd be up to $1,000, blah, blah, blah. And then you have, under the building codes, that's a whole nother ballgame. So you could actually have one building, and you've got 3 or 4 different penalties you're going to assess for 3 or 4 different things. I think for implementing this, it'd be easier if you had one standard that covers the whole ball of wax.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a well-worded sentence, but like I said, if we could, yeah, it makes it difficult because.
Okay.
I mean, I like the idea of making them aware that it could go as far as revoking their occupancy permit. I feel like that would catch people's attention and make them want to apply.
Mm-hmm.
What about, okay, doing that and then saying additionally,
Because if you look on the last page, I have a penalty, which is pretty standard in the health officer realm.
okay, but still, what if we said, under reinspection, we changed the sentence to what you've recommended, but then also we say additionally, property owners may be subject to applicable fines and penalty existing under authorities delegated by state and local law.
Sure, that's putting a huge whammy on them.
Well, yeah, but I don't think it's, you know, I don't think we can sit here and say we want this and even if we didn't have it, it would probably be true anyway. Like the housing standards ordinance does it now. You know, maybe Tim has something where he can, you know, fine people $10,000 a day. We're not going to say that now that goes out the window because we developed a housing standards ordinance. So I don't know.
See, in the sewer part of it, a failed sewer, they can be charged up to $10,000 a day.
Mm.
So yeah, maybe that.
Do you guys have any preference or?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
The one thing where it talks about to remove the certificate of occupancy will be revoked or in order to vacate will be issued.
Should say may be issued.
Okay.
Do you think there should be any wording about the issuing of the CO or allowing the building to be occupied once corrections are made? So let's say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. If we replace revoked with suspended.
That's kind of where I was.
Okay. That kind of implies.
Yeah,
that-
I just, next door, whatever, they're like, okay, we're gonna place one of the vacate on it. Okay, we're gonna fix it now.
Yeah, right.
It's gotta be some sort of wording that we can say, okay.
Reversal or, yeah, maybe just suspended or.
Sure.
And do we want to remove, and should we still say order to vacate, or should we say a temporary order to vacate?
No, I like the order vacated, because that is a temporary.
Yeah,
It
okay.
should say may be issued,
Okay.
which would give us because we usually spend a lot of time talking about the possibility. That would give us all the.
Okay. And then my suggestion about holding on to that language, I feel like it probably doesn't matter whether we do or not, because it's true whether it's in there or not. So should we just drop it?
I would drop it if we're going to accept on the
Yeah.
last page the penalty.
Do you feel this citation from RSA 147:7, are you intending that actually appear in the ordinance?
I know, I put it there for our benefit, so
Okay.
everybody would know
All right.
what that means.
Okay.
And if you thought that was enough, or if we should do more,
All
because
right.
there's no phone calling there. It's strictly by
Oh, yeah.
mail.
I see. I think it's fine with me. If
You
that's
know, have an order issued by the police, or, I'm gonna put that there for our benefit.
Yeah. All right, so what I'm understanding is that I'm not hearing any objection to going with what Catherine has recommended there with the slight change that we say suspended instead of revoked, and order to vacate the building may be issued. So if we don't have any more discussion on that one, that brings us to the last one, third page, reinspection. And let's see here. Currently, so would this be adding to the end of that paragraph also?
Well, we didn't have a place for penalty, so maybe it should be its own heading.
Well, it's the whole heading of the section is fees and fines.
To put it as the last thing just before appeals. Just put penalty and underline it.
Okay. But I feel like the $75 charges are penalties, no?
So this comes into play, what if they don't pay the penalty? And I have, like I said, I have a list of them that haven't paid. And I talked to our prosecutor.
Okay.
So if, somebody goes, I'm $50, so if they get a letter from the prosecutor that says failure to pay the penalty could be a fine of up to $1,000 a day, they'd probably pay the $50.
All right.
No, that makes sense to me.
So you're saying $50, the 50 or 75 now is kind of part of the program, whereas a penalty is if they mess up.
If they fail to adhere to this,
Right.
this is what's going to happen to them.
Okay.
They don't abide by it.
Now, in order to vacate, what are the terms of an order to vacate? I mean, I'm sure that's already in place, right? And they have these guidelines.
Right.
Like,
So,
is there like, you got a week to get out, or is it,
it's
they seem to be throwing people out on the streets?
It's dependent on the person who's placing the order.
Yeah.
Depends on the hazard.
Right.
I'll usually work with people, but if they need to get out, they need to get out. And then we have to post it with the court and all that good stuff as well. So the building has to be posted on the outside. Police have to be notified. There's a process to it.
Right. Obviously, you don't want a faulty heating system, gas leak or something like that, takes more precedence
Yes.
over failed water test or something.
Sure.
Gotcha.
Immediately dangerous to life now, that's pretty much.
I think I've only had one that I've had, I gave them 24 hours, but they didn't have,
We have a couple, right?
they didn't have any sanitary disposal system
And these are
operation.
tenant situations or
These are rent,
property owners?
this was a rental. They
Okay.
didn't have any water, and they didn't have any electricity. And they had a child. I probably wouldn't have said 24 hours if it hadn't
I
had
just
the
don't understand
child.
how people get to that point. Like, I guess
Which
there's a
of
lot
course
things
meant they
people
didn't have
can't
heat.
fathom, like-
Mm.
Well, it was also complicated by the fact that the landlord had the electricity shut off. That was his way of trying to get them to move out. And
Which is-
they couldn't get public service to put it in their name and turn it on. Because they owed money on the bill that he had chosen. There was money owed on the property, so it was very convoluted. But you couldn't, like, I just couldn't leave a child living in those conditions for 24 hours.
No, that's right.
I thought 24 hours was generous.
Is it?
I think we're potentially at the point now. I know
Mhm.
it's sad to say, but to wrap up, I know Al, you were hoping this was going to go on for.
Oh,
Maybe.
hours anyways, yeah.
But anyway, sorry. All kidding aside, so I think we've gone through all of Catherine's recommended amendments. So would someone like to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion, we accept the amendment as written,
Or
as marked up, as modified as as written.
All right, and you seconded.
Yes.
All right. Okay, any discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, so it's unanimous. I guess the only thing left to do would be ask if anyone has any further comments, and if not, seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you, Manchester.
A lot
If
better.
it helps you guys do your job.
I think it has some landlords too. Like I said,
I think they
they,
don't see it that way, but I'm sure it will.
well, they don't, like I said, I hear a lot of objections on the phone to the surprise and why.